Hey guys, welcome back to AMS 590. And today what I want to talk about is what are you good at? Think about the things that you're good at. Would it be safe to say that you are skilled in those things? Yeah, it would. I like woodworking. I'm a skilled woodworker. I like mechanics. I'm a skilled mechanic, particularly when it comes to motorcycles, American-made motorcycles, Harley and Indian. You're probably not familiar with Indian motorcycles if you're not from the United States. They actually went out of business in 1953. So they're very, very collectible, and I have a number of Indian motorcycles. I'm kind of the local go-to guy when it comes to Indians. Harley-Davidson motorcycles, when it comes to the big flats and the knuckleheads, I'm kind of the go-to guy. Last knucklehead was made in 1947, last big flat in 1948. So my skills are getting kind of dated, in other words, but they are in demand for a select group. But what we want to talk about today is the skills approach to leadership. Now we're talking about skills is the ability to do something well with expertise, prowess, talent, or artistry. There's probably other things we could work into this, but nonetheless, it's something that you're very skilled at. It's like the trade approach. It is something that is leader-centered. Many of the leadership types we're going to talk about are going to be very leader-centered. Not all of them will be, but a good number of them will be. Now, skills approach looks at what can I do versus who I am. What are the things that I can actually do? Now, being that they're a do over who I am, do you think they're going to be born or developed? In other words, are they going to be static or dynamic? These are going to be something that's developed over a period of time. Your skills are not something you're born with. You might have somewhat of an aptitude. Some people have a mechanical aptitude or a musical aptitude. But nonetheless, what happens is you have to develop this in order to really be successful. So they are developed. And I mentioned the term already, static or dynamic. As a general rule, if it's developed, it's going to be dynamic. As a general rule, if it's born, it's going to be static, generally. We can split hairs and we can make some arguments about this, but that's pretty in line. Now, what power base do you think will align with this skills approach? I'll bet you are saying, he's talking about expert, isn't he? Now, remember your power bases, because remember we got 5 of them. We've got legitimate, reward, punishment or coercion. They actually call it coercion, but it's punishment. We've got referent, and we've got expert. Skills is definitely expert aligned. That's something that's worthy of being, worthy of remembering. Now, does it align with referent? Yeah, it does align with referent. It's related to both, but this is secondary. Pretty much expert. These are true leadership style powers. If we were to talk about things like reward, things like punishment, and so forth, they really don't even have a role when it comes to skills approach. So if this is an approach you like, it is a little different from that aspect. Now, there's 3 skills that we talk about in the skills approach, and virtually the rest of this class is going to deal with these 3 skills. Skills are technical skills. What are the technical skills you have? What are the human skills you have? And lastly, what are the conceptual skills you have? Now, each of these plays a specific role according to the occupation that you're in or the level within the hierarchy within your occupation that you're in. So all of them do have significance. There we go. Now, first one I want to talk about is, of course, technical skills. Technical skills are considered hard skills. We talk about hard skills, we're talking about things like some type of specialized knowledge, some type of specialized terminology. Now, that's not unusual that we talk about terminology a lot. Tool usage. To me, of the ones we've mentioned, tool usage is the significant one. Now, I'm not saying the others aren't important, they are important, but tool usage is a big deal. And likely, possibly even likely, they're going to be psychomotor in nature. Now, do y'all remember what I mean when I say psychomotor? Remember Bloom's taxonomy. And these things that I'm repeating are things that you can virtually be guaranteed you're going to see again. We talked about Bloom's taxonomy, and we said there were 3 areas that we're particularly interested in. We actually said there were 7 areas total, but we're interested in 3. Psychomotor is skills. Psychomotor is hands-on. Psychomotor is tool usage. Specialized knowledge does align with psychomotor, but it also aligns with the one called cognitive. Cognitive being what do you have rolling around in your head? What are the things that you think about? Things like your IQ and so forth. The last one being the affective domain. The affective is your values, your attitudes, and so forth. That's being at work every day on time and following directions when you're there. Now, when we talk about these technical skills, and things I like to mention about the technical skills is hard skills are something that's very, very sought after. Even in times of economic woe, you find that, and I like to use the term hard skills, but I mean technical, you found hard skills are still very desirable. Has anyone in here read about Rousseau, the philosopher, a French philosopher? He wrote the book Emile. It's actually, I can't get the French roll. Do you speak French by any chance, Ida?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, it's Emile. It's Emily's how it's spelled. He wrote the book Emily. French people will cringe to hear me say that. And anyhow, he talks a lot about skills. And one of the things he points out, if the world were to end tomorrow, who would you rather be? A carpenter or a banker? Well, for a banker, things are gone. For a carpenter, he's going to still build houses. Would you rather be a farmer or an executive? You'd rather be a farmer because you can keep right on farming. You can still feed a family. An executive, that's pretty much gone. And anyhow, Rousseau tied to technical skills directly to psychology or psychomotor. And again, something that I am really comfortable with and I really agree with what he was doing. Now, let's talk a little bit about the technical skills. Technical skills, where do we learn those? We learn them formally, we learn them informally. Now, when we're talking about formal, what we're talking about is things like a high school. We're talking about a vocational school. We're talking about a college or a university. This could be union. Unions do a lot of training. If you've got any background in unions, you know that is the thing that they really do today, is they train people and train them well. If you've been a member of the military, you know that the military is the largest training organization in the United States. More so than any college or university, the military trains. So those are all considered formal. Formal training in technical education means it's very, very planned out. There's a lot of discussion ahead of time about what we're going to teach and what level people will learn. That's formal education. Conversely, you have informal. People learn a lot of technical skills informally. That's experience. My truck broke down. I didn't have the money to fix it. So I got out there and I worked on it and I tried different things and I got it running. That's how I learned motorcycle skills. I have no formal training in being a motorcycle mechanic whatsoever. Work on cars, I do auto body and so forth. I have no formal training, but it's all trial and error. It's on-the-job training. I got together with somebody who knew what they were doing and I watched them. And I learned from that. Now, question for you all. Which one of these do you think is most important when it comes to technical skills? Formal training or informal training? Now I'm going to tell you, you can make an argument for both of these. And I'm not going to pose this question to you, which is more important, formal or informal. Though I will talk about formal and informal and might expect you to make an intelligent argument. Now I'm going to tell you Brent's argument. Brent's argument is you got 2 very important aspects right here. But if I had to choose one, I would choose formal. That's Brent speaking. You can be different. But Brent says I would choose the informal. I'll give you an example. I have a good buddy of mine, Jeff Daugherty. Now, Jeff Daugherty went to school to be a motorcycle mechanic. He moved to Daytona Beach, Florida. He went to the American Motorcycle Institute. He was there for 2 years. Went through all this formal training. And when he got out, he said, I'm going to move back to Bowling Green and open up a motorcycle shop. And I said, Jeff, do you think that's a really good idea? He said, man, I've been to school. I got a diploma. Let me ask you, do you know people that got a diploma in something and still don't know a lot about it? It's not rare. So at any rate, Jeff comes by and he opens up a motorcycle shop. In the meantime, I'm talking to a buddy of ours. He went to school to be a tractor mechanic. And anyhow, when his name's Big Mark, when Big Mark got out of school, he said, I wanted to open a tractor repair dealership. He said, but I knew I didn't have enough knowledge to do it. He said, so I went to work for a tractor dealership and worked for 5 years. And how we were talking about this, I told him what Jeff's going to do. He said he needs about 5 years experience under someone who knows what they're doing. He said then he can apply that formal knowledge that he learned with the informal and be a great mechanic. Well, Jeff didn't believe that, so he opened up his own little shop. First week Jeff's in business, you got me with no formal training. Jeff called me up and said, Brent, would you come over here a minute? I got a bike spread out here in the floor and I can't get the front end back on this damn thing. So I went over, I looked at it, poked around for a while, and anyhow, I was able to figure it out because I know mechanics. Now, did I have the information he has? No way. But did I have superior skills to him? Answer is yes. Ideal situation is we join these two together. We get formal education. We have this vast knowledge. And then we learn to apply it through OJT. And OJT is the one I like to use, but there's a variety of them. So at any rate, both are correct, but Brent Askins believes it's more informal than formal in this particular scenario. Now, this next thing that I want to show you, I'm going to tell you is a little bit different. And this is not in the text. So pay special attention to this, and I want you to know it. I want you to know it for a variety of reasons, because we're going to apply it to each of the 3 skills that we talk about. What this is traditional organizational levels. There's going to be 4 of these. And basically what we're talking about is the structure of an organization. Each organization has 4 structural positions. First one is operative. Second one is supervisory, followed by middle management, and lastly is top management. Now, what does this mean? Operative employee is what I like to call a frontline employee. That is low level, usually psychomotor in nature, and you're not supervising anybody. Now, when we talk about an operative employee, the stereotype that people get is this is somebody that's uneducated. There may be a high school dropout, there's someone that's got a few skills, but they're not necessarily an educated person, not likely an educated person. Well, lots of people align that with the psychomotor also, but in reality, this can be a very well-educated person. Now, it may be a high school dropout, but it can be very well-educated. I'll give you an example. A doctor. Do you think of a doctor as an operative employee? Who does a doctor supervise? Nobody. I have a friend that's a doctor. Actually, I have several friends that are doctors, but one of them in particular was telling me one day, he said, I am just a really high-paid slave. That's basically what I am. He said, they tell me to be at work at 7:15 every day, or a quarter to 8. He said, I show up, they give me a stack of files, so I thumb through the file, and at 8 o'clock, there's someone says, doctor, please go to room A. He said, I go to room A, and he said, I have 15 minutes. I'm going to look at your file, I'm going to talk to you, we're going to exchange a few ideas, how you're feeling and so forth. I'm going to diagnose, I'm going to write it down, I'm going to hand it to my supervisor as I walk out, and she's going to hand me a file that says, go to room B. I'm going to look over that file going into room B. I'm going to talk with you 15 minutes. I'm going to make a diagnosis. I'm going to say what we're going to give you or write a prescription. I'm going to hand it to my supervisor, and I'm going to go to the next one. He said, that is what my day is like all day long. And sometimes you don't even get 15 minutes. You get 10 minutes. You run a little longer, so you got to make it up. I mean, this is truly working on an assembly line. And it's really too bad that that's what medicine has become. But that's an example of an operative employee, frontline worker that is very highly educated and makes a lot of money. Now, supervisory personnel are low-level managers. They're managing somebody, but the only people they're managing is operative employees. They do not manage any other managers at all. These people may well do some production work. They actually have a lot of power to make independent judgments. They have a lot of power when it comes to things like hiring, firing, promotion, coercive measures because you're not doing what you want, reward measures. Supervisor has a lot of power like that. Many of the people that come through this particular program at Western, mostly I'm talking undergraduate, but the graduate too to an extent, are looking for supervisory type roles in business and industry. Some of you aren't, a lot of you are. Actually, after I got out of graduate school, I went to Purdue University, undergraduate from Western, went to Purdue University. I got out, I worked as a supervisor. I was with Keller Manufacturing. I was responsible for some production. I was responsible for all these guys right here, and I made a lot of decisions. I had 27 people under me that I was responsible for every day, and I needed to make sure they did their job at a high level, safely, didn't harass anybody, and I had the ability to fire them if I had a problem with them. I hired new people when I got ready to. I said, you know, send me some applicants. I interviewed them, and I decided who I was going to hire. I mean, I had quite a bit of power, quite frankly. Third group is middle managers. Managers manages other managers to achieve goals. In other words, you got middle managers that's acting as a go-between between the supervisory and top management. This is probably the most maligned position you can ever have, because they're breathing down your neck saying, I want this done, and they're going back at you and say, what in the world did you come up with this crazy stuff? What's the logic behind it? We don't understand. So you really catch it from both sides. Now, from a middle management standpoint, at a university, a department head would be a middle manager. A dean would be a middle manager. You know, these are faculty. These are coordinators. I'm a coordinator. These are department heads and deans. I used to be a department head. And when I was a department head, I had the faculty pissed off all the time about something. And then I had all these frontline workers, they were skipping over the department head to come whine to me, or skipping over the coordinator to come whine to me about stuff. And then I had the dean and the vice president breathing down my neck all the time about something. And I got sick of that, and I quit. And since then, I've been offered other department head jobs, and they don't have enough money to hire me. I like doing what I'm doing. I do a little consulting on the side, so I come out all right on this deal. So now, middle managers, maligned position. Last one's top management. Top management, CEOs, they set policy. That's what a lot of you are in here for, right? At least some of you. They set policy. They set direction. Who's the CEO of Western Kentucky University?
Ransdell?
Gary Ransdell. And Gary Ransdell is a very powerful CEO. Like him or not, he's accomplished a lot of things. He has set the direction and philosophy for this university. As a matter of fact, two things that were Gary Ransdell beliefs when he came in. He said, I will grow the size of this university, and I will make us known for something. And what Gary Ransdell chose, he said, we will be the university with international reach. And he brought in large numbers of foreign-born students. So some of you in class are because of our top management. That was his philosophy. And he was very successful at it. The second thing that Gary Ransdell said he was going to do is he was going to make this the most beautiful campus in the state of Kentucky. He was going to build, he was going to beautify. Now, I was here previously. I was here before Gary Ransdell. I've been here longer than he has. The previous president was a guy named Tom Meredith. And Tom Meredith was a good man. And I knew Tom Meredith. And to be honest with you, I probably got along with him better than I do Gary Ransdell. But Tom Meredith, his focus was, we're going to basically keep this a smaller university. We're not looking to grow a whole lot. And what we're going to do is we may only have 12,000 students, but we're going to have the best product you can possibly have. And he let the buildings go down. He let things fall a lot under Tom Meredith. And, you know, it's unfortunate that the physical facilities fell as much as they did under him. Anyhow, Top management sets direction, where you're going, what your long-term goals are. This particular group right here has had more changes financially in the last 30 years than they've had in the history of the world. It's unbelievable what's happened with them. In the last 30 years, the adjusted salary for other employees has increased. This is adjusted, allowing for inflation and some things, has increased 5.7% in 30 years, okay? The adjusted salary for top management in the last 30 years, and I want to write this down so you make sure you see this. You think it's increased or decreased? It's increased
7%.
725% in the last 30 years. Can you believe that? Now, remember, the other group,
5.7.
5.7%. 725%. Unfreaking believable. It's gave rise to people like Bernie Sanders. You know, whether you're a Bernie fan or not, it's give rise to people like him. It's giving them a voice in an argument. And they point to this all the time and say, this is crazy. Okay. Let's move along and look at something a little bit different. Or actually, we're going to look at the same thing. We're going to go back to technical skills required. Now, I'm going to leave the operative employee out in this one. And I tell you, I'm leaving them out because we're talking about leadership, and operative employees don't supervise anyone. So they're dropped off. Supervisory, middle management, top management. How important are technical skills? Supervisory, your technical skill level is high. You need to know that. Now, I don't have to be the best welder on the line. I don't have to be the best cabinet maker on the line. But I need to know what's going on down there. It's important that I have a good knowledge of that. And as I mentioned earlier, in many situations, I dare say the largest number of situations, supervisors do a certain amount of actual work. I had better cabinet makers than me at Keller Manufacturing, but I knew every job in the place to some level. Now, middle management, you know, I worded this funny, to be honest with you. I went ahead and left it up here. Middle management is actually not as high as supervisory, but it's higher end. Yeah, you got to know what's going on. You can't be completely dumbfounded as to what they're doing. So you need a higher end knowledge of what's going on. And the last one's top management. You don't need a heck of a lot of that. You're for running this company. You're for finding direction. Your important role is other things.
Yes.
Now, an example that I talk about in some other classes, I'll give y'all this example, is Charles Comello. He was in the printing industry, or was brought into the printing industry. Printing industry is a very closed group. If you're going into the printing industry, you started at the bottom and you worked your way up. That's just the way it is. You're born into it, or you started into it early in life. This particular industry is Walden. Was having all kinds of problems, and they decided to do something crazy. And they went out and they hired a guy that knew zero about the printing industry. He knew nothing, and brought him in. And he was very innovative in some of the things he did. And Walden went from just like that. Now, in recent years, they've been overrun by some other companies, but Charles Comello had significant impact, and it was because he was a real manager. He was really creative, and that's what they needed. Top management doesn't, Gary Ransdell doesn't have to be a great teacher, because he's not teaching. He needs to know a little bit about what we do. He doesn't have to be a great researcher. He doesn't have to be a great service guy. He doesn't have to know a whole heck of a lot about it. He's got to know how to run the university. Y'all don't know this, but when Gary Ransdell interviewed for that job, They actually almost hired an attorney from Kansas who'd never been at a university. He was an attorney that had run some businesses, and he said, I can run this like a business. And I think he'd have done a great job. So basically what happens is and I can kind of got these on here backwards, the higher up in management you go, the less technical skills that are required. Okay, let's take a look at our second one. Our second one is human skills. Human skills are often called soft skills. Soft skills are the kind of training I typically do when I go into business and industry. Do I do some training in hard skills? Yeah, I do that occasionally, but I'm more of a soft skills guy, to be realistic. Soft skills are knowledge about and ability to work with people. I would argue that I don't care who you are, you need to have that. One of the quotes I came across I really like, I was looking for this. We spend more time with people than we do the product. I've got to be able to get my people to produce. One of the things with the soft skills today is the diversity of the population. Populations that we work with simply aren't the same as they were at one time, so that makes these soft skills even more important. And regardless of the diversity of the population, the way we treat and interact with people today is very different because of a philosophical shift that we had when it came to work supervision that took place in the 1960s. Prior to the 1960s, it was a very strict, structured, you do it my way or the highway type deal. In the it was the product dominated. In the 1960s, we start seeing a shift where the product no longer dominates, but the human dominates. Now, we're still interested in the product. We've still got to make a living. We still got to produce a great product. But if you're happy, you feel good about yourself, you enjoy what you're doing and people you work with, you'll produce a better product. Subsequently, this makes soft skills even more important. Now, when this happened in the 1960s is debatable, but it's continued to increase throughout the years. And, you know, of course, by examples, I typically use examples in the United States. I dare say the same thing goes on overseas. Maybe the 1960s, early 1960s isn't the correct time to say, but I think we're seeing pretty much the same thing. We're seeing a very conscious effort to bring in populations that weren't traditionally brought in and accommodate, and bringing in females. A lot of occupations were male only for years and years and years, and now we're bringing females in. Again, very productive people. One of the companies that I work for, NJATC, the National Journeyman's Apprenticeship Training Commission, I'm a representative for them, and we work with the Electrical Union for the United States and Canada. That's basically what, and Bahamas. Bahamas are in there, don't want to leave them out. We've got like 6 members in Bahamas. But at any rate, so there's 3 countries involved. At any rate, our training group was male originally. Completely male, 50 trainers, male across the board. And incidentally, there was a little bit of diversity within the group as far as they weren't all white, but at any rate, it was 50 males. Over the years, one of the things that started coming up, they said, you know, it used to be we had about 2% females that were doing training within the union. They said, we're up to about 15% today. So we made an effort, so we need to diversify the group, and we need to make sure that we don't offend anyone. So we started bringing in more and more females into the NJATC. And now we don't have 50 people training anymore, we have 40 people training, but we've got about 6 females training. So anyhow, they came in, they worked out real good. Now, where do we learn these human skills, soft skills? Do we learn them formally, or do we learn them informally? Okay, Anna's giving me, she thinks that's informal. You think it's both? Okay. We can learn human skills formally. There are things that we go to training programs, we can learn about them. But the fact of the matter is, this is one that a lot of this is, you interact with mom and dad, you interact with your siblings, your neighbors, your friends. We develop a lot of this on our own. It's one of the formal reasons we need is because sometimes we're dealing with different cultures. And when I say different cultures, I'm not necessarily saying United States versus Iran or Canada or something. What I'm actually saying is rural Kentucky versus urban Kentucky. I'm talking about Clinton County versus Hardin County. I'm talking about even there's cultural differences in the way we view things and the way we interact with each other. So it's not just a race issue or a gender issue. Now, human skills required: supervisory, middle management, top management. Supervisory skills, human skills are very, very high. You need to be good at this. Believe me, I've been in that position. Guy that communicates well does a whole lot better than the one that doesn't. Middle management needs to be very high because you're juggling these two back and forth all the time. Believe me, I know that. I know people that have moved into these middle management positions, lower middle management, and the only thing that's keeping them from moving to upper middle management or even top management is they lack these human skills. And sometimes I feel sad for them because they have no idea that that's the wall they keep running into. You know, what do you take someone aside and say, look, buddy, said, I need to talk to you about something. Said, you're an ass, and everybody thinks so. You need to work on that. I'll tell you a true story, honest to God, true story. We had a faculty member here years ago. And at the university, you're graded on 3 things. Every year, they review me for 3 things. They say, Brent, do you teach your classes and do a good job? They say, Brent, do you do service work in the community, in the university, community, state, or on the national level? And they say, Brent, do you do research every year? Those 3 things are what they're looking for. Well, I do my 3 every year. I have no problems getting continuation. Get 5 years continuation, you get tenure. Hopefully. You know, you do good, you get promoted. You know, promotion-wise, I'm at the top. I'm tenured. I've been at 25 years. I'm the senior faculty in this department right now. We had a guy come through, and he was an okay teacher. I'm not saying he's great. He's an okay teacher. He's good enough. Service work, pretty good service work. Research was excellent. There was no reason this guy wouldn't get continuation every year, get tenure, get promoted. Okay? He liked it here. One year, he was voted to be terminated. The department said, and the tenured faculty get to decide this. I'm one of them. Tenured faculty said, we need to stand this guy. We need to get rid of him. And you know, you can actually do that continuation whether they fit in and get along with everyone, plays a role. And anyhow, the department head said, you know, let's meet with him and talk to him and explain what's going on. Said, I'm going to turn in your all's vote to get rid of him. The majority, not all, but the majority. But I'm going to vote to keep him. And we're going to talk to him about what he needs to do. Well, we went to this meeting, it's in this room, as a matter of fact. We went to this meeting, we all sitting there, and no one would tell him what was going on. He said, I don't understand. And people kept skirting around the topic. I didn't say anything. And when it was over, I said, hey man, what are you doing for lunch? And he said, nothing. I said, have lunch with me and we'll talk. And when we started out the door, he said, I don't understand what everyone's talking about. I said, I'll tell you what they're talking about. They think you're an asshole. I said, this is how you come off. And I just did some things he did. And I said, what do you think when I do this to you? And I did what he might do in a meeting. He said, I said, that's what they see. I said, maybe you don't mean anything about it, but that's what people see. I said, what you need to do is look at the way other people interact. You know, don't be slinging your hands around. Don't be raising your voice. Don't be pointing your finger at somebody when you're talking to them. See what I mean? And he said, I'm trying to get my point across. I said, yeah, but you're pissing me off when you do it. Quit doing it. So, just simple things like that. Anyhow, after we had lunch, we came back and we're laughing about it. And he said, thank you. He said, I know exactly what I need to do. And I'll tell you what, the next year he backed off, he watched himself. He took a couple classes on human skills. I mean, they were just workshops, they weren't formal classes. He's a great guy, man. everything worked out good for them. So these things are significant, and they're high in all levels, including the top management. Top management needs to be able to have good human relation skills. Now, this human relation skills aspect being the one that's got the highest in all areas, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an activity related to this one. Y'all know I like activities. Here's what we're going to do. I want you all to go to this website right here. Now, watch me here. This is not a dash, and it's not just a blank. This is an underscore. That's always a problem. I want you to go to this website, and if you have problems getting on it by that, just Google, how good are your people skills? It's at mindtools.com. All you got to do is type in how good are your people skills or this website. I don't know why people have trouble with this. I can get on it, some people can't. You know, what's going to happen is a thing's going to come up, and it's going to be an inventory. I want you to take that inventory. This inventory is done completely online. There's only 16 questions. It's a Likert scale. They have instructions on how to do it. It's going to ask you a statement. It said, I'm very often like that, not at all, middle of the road. Okay? Take this thing, submit it, and you're going to get a printout. It's going to tell you about your human skills. So I want you to pause me right now. Just leave it running. I'm just going to say, y'all pause me. Go ahead and pause it. I'm assuming you've paused it and you're taking this thing. Now I'm going to assume you've unpaused it and you've already taken it. So don't mess around here. Take this thing because it's a lot more interesting if you do rather than watch me the whole time. So you've taken it. Now what you know is that you've got a printout of skills in 4 areas, and it's going to tell you about how you specifically fit in these 4 areas. And what we want to do is take a look at that. There it is. Lost my thing here for a minute. Your scores are going to be 16 to 36, 37 to 58, 59 to 80. Okay. Now let's look at what they actually mean. I scored a 65 overall. And a 65 overall is actually considered a higher end score. I'm in the top category when it comes to human relation skills. The highest you can score is an 80, and as long as you score above a 59, you're considered to be in pretty good shape. So I'm in the top right there, and I will be honest with you, I'm disappointed I didn't score higher than that. I felt like I should have, but hey, I'm going to trust this thing is telling me the truth. Now, on the interpersonal score, I scored a 19 out of 20. I think that my interpersonal relationships with people, regardless of your race, gender, background, and all, I think they're pretty good. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is very important to me. If this score was low, I would do something to change this right now. Of all of them that I'll put up here, I think that's perhaps the most important. Now, with this inventory you took, it's going to have a thing below there that's going to be specific to you about things that may occur that cause you to have a lower score than what you thought you should have and what you could do to raise that score. In my case, there doesn't have a whole lot under there of things I can do to raise it. I got a 19 out of 20. When it comes to managing differences in people, I scored an 18 out of 20 in that one. Hey, I don't have a problem with that. Pretty good with it. I actually teach classes on team conflict, communication, and so forth, and that's directly related to this one. As a matter of fact, the only surprise I had on it is I didn't score highest on it. I would think I would do real good on that. I did good on it. I'm happy. Managing agreement. Now this is one I got to tell you, I don't know that there's a whole heck of a lot of management to agreement. Maybe that's why I scored an 11 out of 20 on it. And basically they're talking about like things like groupthink, and they're talking about things like probing questions and so forth. And I'm not surprised I scored the lowest on it. I'm not surprised I scored 11 out of 20 on it. Like I say, I'm not really into that one. It's not a big deal to me. maybe it should be. That's the one that hurt me, that brought my scores down. They had a lot of ideas for things I could do to do better with that, and I'm gonna look at that and take it serious. And the last one is personal integrity. I like to think that I have good personal integrity. 17 out of 20 is certainly not a bad score in personal integrity. So, at any rate, these are my scores. So I'd like you all to look at your scores. Look at the things they suggest and say, hey, you know, what are some things that I could work on? I hope we all score 59 or above. Now, I'm not going to downgrade you if you score less than that, but I want you to take this. And I'm going to actually want to know a little bit about it just to know that you took it. And that's one of the things you'll get credit for. To say, hey, you were involved in class, you took the inventory, like we talked about. So there'll be these, after each of these videos, there'll be a list of things that I want a copy of. And it's just to show that you're involved, you're participating, that you're participating, I think you're learning is the bottom line. Okay, desirable soft skills. I wanted to talk more about the soft skills since it was the top on every one of them. And, you know, I just looked at some different studies. What are the desirable soft skills that we have? And I came up with a list that I want to share with you that are important soft skills. Well, let's make a comment about some of them. The ability to relate to others. A well-rounded person can relate to lots of different people regardless of their background. Quick story, and I'm not going to tell a story on all these, but I'm going to tell a story on this one because I had something happen one time I thought was really interesting. There used to be a bar here in Russellville Road. It's called the Wawa. It's not there anymore. Great place. Loved it up there. Anyhow, I rode into the Wawa on a motorcycle one day, and I saw a good friend of mine, a former student. Her name is Melanie Harston. Melanie Harston came in with 3 of her girlfriends, and she sat down at a table that had about 6 chairs at it. So there was room for me. So I rode in by myself, and I walked over and said, hey, Melanie, how you doing? Melanie and I were talking for a minute. And one of the people with her said, sit down. I said, sure. Now, I'm going to tell you that Melanie later told me, she said, I did not want you to sit down, Brent. I did not want you at that table with us. Because one of the girls at that table is your exact opposite. She said, if you say left, she'll say right. Said, I mean, you two are just like this. And said, not only did you sit down, you sat down beside her. That's who asked me to sit down. So we sat down, and her and I started talking. And Melanie thought, oh my God, so there's going to be fireworks here any minute because they're going to hate each other and it's going to go to hell fast. I sat there for 2 hours drinking beer and chatting with her, and she was the most enchanting lady I've met, and I don't know when. And Melanie's right, there is not a thing in the world that me and that woman would agree on. She's as different from me as anybody I've ever seen in my life. But she accepted me for the way I am. I accepted her for the way she is. And we talked about our differences, and we laughed about them. And we made some jokes about each other. And we were both good-natured. And there's a little can you say the word self-decrepitating? What it means is you poke fun at yourself. I have trouble with that word. And anyhow, we sat there and laughed and carried on and had the greatest time. That's what Melanie told me later on. Said, I didn't want you to sit down because she was there. She said, I thought, wow, he can get along with anybody. I said, oh, she was great. And so she told me, said, the next time I come to town, said, I'd like to get together with him. Now, I mean, all of us get together. I was still married at the time. This wasn't a private get together. She was cute, though. Okay, patience. You need to have patience where you can remain level-headed at all times, not lose your temper. Trust in others. You need other people to succeed. My attitude is that I want to have the best people around me, and I want to trust them to do the job that I hired them for. I don't want to be in a position where I think that I'm above everybody, because I want to hire people better than I am. To me, that makes me look good. I've got to trust them. That's key. Empathy for others. I want to be able to see things from other people's points of view. This is important to me. I want to talk about this in a little bit. I absolutely cannot stand arrogant people. That burns me up. I'll tell you an arrogant story. And these stories I'm telling y'all, these are true stories. I'm not going to tell you where they happened, or who they happened with. This is a true story. And this happened in this department. This department. We have a faculty member that comes in. They're smart. They got a doctorate from somewhere. I know they think a lot of themselves and they're arrogant. And they're okay doing their job. They teach all right. They do service all right. They're pretty good researcher. They're arrogant. And I don't like their attitude with anybody. And anyhow, at the time, I'm chairing a committee on whether you get continuance or not, whether you get tenure or not. And at any rate, I had just had it. I've had it. I'm at the end of the rope. I'm tired of fooling with them. And when this committee's coming up, I want to go in with all the information I need to talk about this committee. I want to get the votes because I want them fired. I want them out of here. So I talked to different people, and there's kind of wishy-washy on the support, but I tell you what I did. I believe that two of the most important people at this university, in this department, is the janitor and the secretary. And when people go to work at other companies, and I meet with, let's take my student teachers when they're out in the classroom, when I visit them, I always say, what's the janitor's name? Is the secretary married? What do you know about her? Because that tells me a lot about how this person's going to fit in and get along. So I went to the janitor, and I said, hey, I want to ask you about Dr. So-and-so. I said, what's your interactions with him? And they were real hesitant at first. I said, look, just shoot it to me straight. I said, this doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. This is me and you talking. I said, we're looking at his continued employment. I said, you tell me. And he said, that's the rudest manner I've been around my life. I said, I'm not kidding you. He said, tell you what he does. He said, he uses the whiteboard, and he's too lazy to erase it. He writes a note up in the corner and says, erase, please erase, and leaves. He said, everything is always a mess. There's crap laying everywhere. Bad attitude. He told me about him, and I said, that's what I thought. I'm glad you told me that. I said, between you and I, don't worry about it. So then I go to the secretary. I said, hey, I want you to tell me about Dr. So-and-so. I said, what are your interactions? And she got teary. And she said, I've never had a man talk to me like that before. Said, it makes me so mad. And she started just naming one thing after another, the way he treated her. And I actually knew this because I'd seen a little bit of it. And she said, my husband thinks I should just quit and go work somewhere else. Said, I swear he's going to come in here and punch him in the mouth one day. I said, well, you just let me handle this. And said, you have a problem with him. Said, you come get me. And said, I'll intervene. Anyhow, I got together with that committee and I laid everything out. I laid that out. And I said, this man has no empathy for anyone else. He's arrogant, self-centered, and I don't think he treats students any better. Actually, I knew that. And we voted to get rid of him, and you all never have to have him in class because of that. And you're lucky you don't. Remember that when you're in a position where you're the one in power. Look at things from other people's points of view. It matters. That's a significant human relation skill. Listening skills. I wouldn't even talk about it. Y'all listen well, don't you? Work on your listening skills. You need to listen to people without interruption. Listen to what they have to say. Just a funny story here. I have stories written. Now, sometimes I want to tell them. Sometimes I'll tell you all this story. It's kind of funny. You know I'm single. I date. I have a website. It's got a picture of Brent. I said, oh, I'd like to go out with you. It doesn't say that, but anyhow. Actually, I haven't been on it in a long time. Just got tired. But met this lady, and I'm not kidding you. She is one of the most beautiful women I've ever met. She is pretty. She's got a very nice figure on her. Got pretty good height. She's got a lot of height to her. Not that that's a requirement, but it never hurts. And she's got 2 master's degrees. Well educated. She's employed. She doesn't have a drug problem or ex-husband trying to kill her, which I find is not rare. And at any rate, she doesn't listen to anything. She never shuts up. I swear to you, I went out with her a couple times and I thought, well, she's a little nervous. And she even says, I get nervous around you sometimes. I don't know why. I said, no, not either. So anyhow, I was about ready to put her on the road anyway. And I met her down in Franklin to pick her up when they were coming to Bowling Green for something. And I picked her up and I said, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And she started talking. And we walked to the car, I opened the door, she got in the car, I drove all the way to Bowling Green, and I never said a word, she never shut up. And I remember before I got to Bowling Green, I thought, "This will be the last time I ever drive you Bowling Green. I'll never see you again." That was the end of it. And she emails me occasionally, "How are you doing? You know, I still haven't seen anybody." I'm like, "Yeah, you never will either." So I snicker about that when I think about listening skills. She has no listening skills. Genuine interest in others, you know, actually asking questions, curiosity. She had no interest in anyone. Flexibility. You need to be flexible in the groups that you deal with. You're not always going to be dealing with people in suit and tie. Sometimes you're going to be dealing with people that are operative employees that maybe have 8th grade education. Sometimes you're going to be dealing with people that have less than perfect table manners. Different populations. One of the things I said when I was talking about going out with someone is, I need you to be able to go to the symphony with me well dressed. Also need you to be able to get on a motorcycle and ride around and stop in an old swanky bar in a pair of blue jeans and have a beer and get along. To me, that's a very valuable trait. I've got lots of friends that are bikers. I mean, they're rough. Get along with them great. I've got other friends that are doctors. You know, they suit and tie, classical music. Get along with them great. Good judgment. Good judgment is usually gained from poor judgment. If you screw up a few times, you understand. Have you heard a country song? Guy says, "How will I ever get to be old and wise if I ain't ever young and crazy? If I ain't never young and crazy." Google that and play that. You'll like it. Persuasion, the ability to sell yourself, sell your ideas. Negotiating skills. One of the things I found is people from the Middle East, when I say the Middle East, I'm particularly talking about my experiences here with Saudi Arabia. You are great negotiators. I've had some interaction on some things, even sold something one time. And I was surprised how smooth and slick they were at negotiating. I was talking with actually a friend of mine, a Persian friend of mine, talking about that, and she said, "Oh, said they're good at that." Said they're brought up doing that. I said, "Well, they're really good, and it shows too." Open-mindedness, you know, you value other people's input and so forth. Sense of humor, you've got to be able to laugh at yourself sometimes. Being able to laugh at yourself and others in situations really takes the edge off. Awareness of body language. Interesting statistic, 60 to 80% of your success in communication is nonverbal. It's your body language. In good manners. You need to have good manners. Tell you, you know, things like thank you, yes sir, no sir, I appreciate your input. Things like that matter. And what you'll find is the more that you do, the more that you'll get back. Good manners gets good manners. Try to always do that. Hey guys, we're on a roll. We got one left to go. You gonna hang in with me? Good deal. Last one is conceptual skills. We won't spend quite as much time on conceptual skills. Conceptual skills could be looked at as a certain vision, a strategic plan, an idea about where we're going. There's a certain creativity to it. It's abstract in nature, which really makes it hard for me to talk about. You say, "Oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we didn't do that?" It's very cognitive in nature. There's not a lot of hands-on with this one. It's pretty much up here. It's considered long-term. Now, something I want to mention to you all, worthy of remembering. Long-term in nature is goals. Goals are things that I will achieve. Long-term, I can't define long-term. We could say long-term is a week, a month, a year. We could say it's, the beginning of your career. Conversely, we have what's called objectives. Objectives are short-term in nature. You do objectives to achieve goals. You do a number of objectives to achieve a goal. Make sense? So concepts are goal-oriented. Where do we learn concepts? Formal or informal? Wow. This one right here. I don't know. Certainly there's an informal aspect to it. I mean, you say you're born, some people are born with it. Some people develop it through people they interact with. I mean, informal, there's something there for all of them. There's actually training programs, formal training programs to develop conceptual skills.
Book.
In their games, really.
Book.
Books. You can read about stuff like that. Conceptual is difficult to put a finger on. Conceptual skills required: supervisory, middle management, top management. Supervisory, what about that? Know a little bit. Middle management, yeah, you need to know some things about it, just so you can communicate. Top management, this is your job. This is what Gary Ransdell does. 20 years ago, Gary Ransdell had a vision of what he was going to do with this university. Gary Ransdell did that. I'll give him that. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. There was a rumor at one time. It actually wasn't even hardly a rumor. There was just a few of us talking at one time. This was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I said, I believe that Gary Ransdell's goal is to change this university to the point he wants to make sure that we're set apart from every university in the state. And I think that he will drop the name Western Kentucky University, because Western Kentucky University implies that we're a regional university in the western part of the state, which is realistically what we were for years and years. And I think he will change it to Kentucky International University, because he says, look at all the international talent we bring in. And I still think he would like to do that. I think it was talked about. I wonder if he might even try that his last year. I don't know. But that's just my opinion. Okay, what I want to do is I want to do some activities related to conceptual skills. Now, y'all got a couple of handouts that you downloaded. And here's one of them. One of them